You are listening to the County Pulse, available on 104.5, 106.1, TV 12, and on countypulse.org. We are here today with me, Sanat Nair, Rossin Duplantis, Jack Paler, Isabella Forsheri, and Jason Scherer.
All right, to start off the news segment of our show, I first want to talk about what some students at Sam Houston College are doing. So these medical students are actually offering free clinics for the Conroe homeless, and they are going to be providing free basic medical services to the homeless community. And this is going to be occurring in Conroe at 304 Avenue E, and it will be held every second Saturday of the month.
Awesome. Very cool.
And next on the news, we have information regarding Gordy Bunch and Bruce Reiser, who are open to revisiting mud takeover of Woodlands Incorporates. This issue was discussed at a local meeting of a political action committee with two township directors expressing the openness to the idea if the city does incorporate into a city in the future. These township directors include Gordy Bunch and Bruce Reiser, who we have interviewed on the County Pulse before, so if y'all would like to check that out, please do. And who said they're in favor of continuing exploration of the idea of observing the 11 different muds in the Woodlands. 10 muds are located in Montgomery County, while one is in Harris County and serves the village of Creekside Park. One of the problems with the issue is the varying levels of depth among the 11 muds. Some have paid all their bonds and have very low tax returns, while others carry tens of millions of dollars in debt and have much higher tax returns. However, opponents to the idea of observing the muds say by doing so, those residents in the muds that have paid off their debt would now be required to foot the bill of another muds because a future city of the Woodlands would spread the tax across the entire community as one city-run water agency. In the initial study done by H.R. Green, Matix Consulting, and Novak Consulting Group, officials told directors in 2018 that their recommendation was to keep the current MUD system and was based on several factors. Each of the 11 MUDs have differing tax rates, debt, and infrastructure. In 2017, Hall said that the 11 MUDs generated around $65 million in revenue from user charges and taxes. Combined, as of fall of 2018, the 11 MUDs have $500 million in resources such as land and infrastructure, but they have also combined $40 million in debt. Because the Township Board decided to not place the issue of incorporation on the 2020 ballot for voters, the issue will likely not arise until 2022. Various township directors have said that they prefer that the residents possibly vote on the major issue during a major election, such as 2022 or 2024. When turnout is higher and more residents would possibly go to the polls.
Right. So in other news, recently with the development of the East Shore neighborhood in the Woodlands, we wanted to revisit some of the issues surrounding the development of that neighborhood, specifically Mitchell Island. So for listeners that are not familiar with the Woodlands area, Lake Woodlands, which is basically is the center of the Woodlands, is a man-made lake. And a part of that, they have established a man-made island in the middle of it. That's right off of the west, or the east bank of the lake. And so the Howard Hughes Development Corporation wants to expand and put residential homes in that area. So we want to revisit in a discussion the reasons why the Howard Hughes Corporation halted development plans and talks last September, and also what the pros and cons are and what the future of the Woodlands is. But to revisit the issue a little bit in more detail, the Howard Hughes Corporation wanted to expand Mitchell Island in the past decade. They had plans drafted in 2012 to put 19 large mansions on the island, the community be private and gated, and a part of the East Shore HOA. So it's just an extension of that previous community. This is pretty significant. This is a large change to I guess you could say the skyline or the shoreline of the Lake Woodlands, especially it being so close to Hughes Landing and North Shore Park. But there was a lot of issues that came about when, in 2019, there was announced talks of replating that area. Right. So basically, the Howard Hughes Corporation wanted to include townhomes on that property, on that piece of land, so they wanted to replat and replan that neighborhood out. So instead of 19 large mansions, they want to include 17 large mansions, or I guess mid-sized mansions, right? And then also a lot of townhomes with a total of $58 million homes. So what we can see now is that they're building out those townhomes on the East Shore community that already exists there. So they want to extend that out onto the island. But residents last year had some issues with that. They were concerned with environment conservation. So there are a lot of eagles in the Lake Woodlands area. It's been established that since the 90s, bald eagles have basically used the lake as like a place to roost, to hunt, and to like basically relax. So a lot of residents in the local area on the Lake Woodlands shore basically decided to form an activist group to stop this replating because they expected the increased traffic would displace the eagles. So we'll talk more about that later in the episode, but I'm going to pass over to Jack about some recent news.
Yeah, so just today, what was it, like 2 hours ago, something like that. Greg Abbott just fully reopened Texas. I know where we live, it feels like that we've been open since, we've always been open.
Right.
But yes, he just repealed the capacity restrictions for restaurants and such.
I'm going to correct you there, Jack. He's proposing to repeal.
Proposing, yeah. Right. That's right. I knew there was something there. And also, the mask mandate, too, is set to go away. And all this, right, the 10th, right, of March?
Yeah, I believe
is when
so.
Is when they're set to... So right now he's meeting with state officials and whatnot to decide whether or not this is the best move. And basically what it sounds like is behind closed doors. They already know it's a done deal, and they're going to have it all repealed. And we've seen Florida fully reopen, right? And we've seen a few other places fully reopen recently. And honestly, you would think Texas to open before all those other states. But it's very interesting seeing how we're already opening. It felt weird. It felt like out of nowhere.
Right.
Because honestly, I would have expected us to open back at the beginning of the school year, because now all the protocols and stuff are just becoming numb. It's like daily routine. You've gotten used to it so far. So it's almost like the repeal of all this is going to be more noticeable than all the routines and everything that have been put into place. But I think this will mainly have a noticeable effect in cities and stuff. And then here, I mean, of course, most places have already been opened fully with capacity because it's difficult, if not impossible, to enforce these orders. But it's very interesting seeing this come down very quick. I know Greg Abbott, he is not favored on either side of this political spectrum. Because, again, people are saying that he hasn't done enough. And then, of course, there's some people saying that whatever he's done so far has been too much. So, I mean, he's kind of in a tough spot to please whoever he wants to. But, yeah, so you should, if you're in a city and even around here, like in restaurants and stuff that are only keeping these regulations in place just for, safeguarding, you should start to see differences. School districts. This is what I was going to mention, too. School districts may have... they may repeal some of the policies set into place, but at like the government level, especially local governments, as I mentioned to you earlier, they have to think more in terms of liability. If they were to, get like a negligence lawsuit or something, their insurance companies and the attorneys that work for the districts, they have been the ones pushing mostly for these regulations, just to keep, I guess, a little bit of like a legal safeguard, just in case, they had a negligence lawsuit and let's say they didn't have like a mask rule or something. Someone's attorney could argue, oh, look, you guys were irresponsible for not having this put into place. Right. Whereas if they had the mandate in place and had all these strict precautions, it would make it very difficult, if not impossible, for someone to win like a negligence case, which... Actually, this will be the last thing I say about this, but insurance companies, it's actually even more scary dealing with insurance companies on this because, I mean, they could just decide not to cover them if they got a lawsuit and had not had these put into place. And if they, like, at the family of someone who died or got super ill was awarded like multiple, like many millions of dollars, they would have to, that would come out of our pockets. They'd have to do like a bond or something since, of course, insurance refused to cover it. But there's a lot of reasoning behind everything. It's super complex. Not a lot of stuff that people would think about.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, and actually in regards to like the school ISDs, they're actually coming out and saying that they actually want to work with the TEA and see what they're saying in regards to that. But as of for now, they would like to continue using the safety protocols and procedure until further notice. And so that's what's going on with the ISDs.
Right. And yeah, following what the TEA says also helps safeguard them too.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that they're not going to make any like major changes like through the school year, but this is
Right.
more like an outlook for next school year, especially for, like the lower levels of education, like like elementary and stuff like that are already like really hard to regulate with like kids who don't want to cooperate and parents who aren't like super like in line with what the regulations are. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out next year, and we'll just see how the situation evolves, I guess. But I know that and a lot of like California secondary education, like high schools, right? They've been closed down for pretty much the pandemic, right?
Yeah, a whole year.
Especially in like the Bay Area and stuff like that. So they're starting to do their like in person, their synchronous learning and their asynchronous learning stuff. So they're starting to push back for reopening. I know there's been a lot of calls from certain political figures on to like reopen schools and stuff like that. So I think this is kind of like the first signs of that being materialized. So we're just gonna have to see how the situation evolves, I think. But it's gonna be interesting to see what does happen and if it does like significantly change what school looks like for students, I guess, specifically. But
Right.
yeah.
I think all adults there's going to be enough vaccine distribution where all adults can be vaccinated by, I think, like mid-May or something like that, which over the summer, of course, I mean, vaccinating children, it doesn't take too much. And many of them might not need it, like especially the younger ones, if they've already had it or they're not, I guess, as likely to getting it or something. I don't know. But because right now it's there's an issue with some of the vaccines where they just won't give it to you unless you're 18. Like a lot of them like require you to be an adult. So that's the main reason why a lot of people like our age are having a hard time getting vaccinated. But we are in 1B, should be in 1C pretty soon, which 1C covers like the last chunk of whatever essential worker is defined as. But
or like frontline maybe. I don't know.
right. So we're moving along pretty fast.
Yeah, I know that I was listening to this podcast the other day actually about like vaccine distribution and what it means for like a new normal, like past like quarantine, I guess. And it looks like it's going to become more like a flu situation where it's constantly evolving. It's kind of low risk for a large portion of the population, but it's always going to be like an issue, especially like the winter months where people are like more compromised than they usually are. So I think this is kind of like the first stage of that transition into that like flu-like stage, right? Once everybody's vaccinated and like the lethality of the virus is like decreased, right? I think we're going to be seeing more like long-term, like evolving vaccinations, boosters, stuff like that.
Yes, boosters too.
So we'll see how that evolves. It's really hard to comment on, especially in Texas too, because it's not like it's kind of like unique in the way it's approached.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens and if we do see significant increases in COVID cases, if those certain restrictions are relaxed. But
I personally think the CDC is going to, once you get vaccinated, I mean, I have a feeling pretty soon, maybe within the next month or two, they're going to say, you don't have to do anything. You're done, like with precautions and stuff, because they've already rolled back. So like, let's say you're vaccinated and if you're like around someone who tested positive, you no longer have to quarantine because of that. So they keep like pushing stuff back. So it makes it seem like they're getting confident enough in the vaccine that you can't transmit it or get it, or you're not as likely to enough for them to keep everything in place. But
yeah, one last touch on that, on the vaccine. I know it's been pretty like undetermined whether like the vaccine does inhibit the spread of the virus, because I think it really has to do with like if the virus, and this is like a very cursory understanding of like how viruses work.
Mhm.
But from my understanding, it seems as if it's not sure whether the virus is going to be basically shut down before it can start being contagious with other people.
Gotcha.
So I'm assuming that the CDC is especially looking for data on whether someone can stop being contagious if they already have the vaccine, if they're already exposed, because it's kind of like undetermined right now. It's kind of like a gray area.
Right.
So once we have more people with the vaccine who are interacting with people on a daily basis who have had the COVID or do have COVID, then maybe we'll see some more changes regarding CDC recommended procedure. I
That
don't
would
know.
be super nice to see the vaccine work both ways.
Yeah, that would be like probably the best case scenario, so if it stops spread.
Yeah, further the reopening.
Yeah. What do y'all think about that? Any other words on the changing procedures?
Yeah, well, one thing I would say is that it's just going to be very interesting because each state has its own way of going about this. Like the CDC, we haven't really had to use it before as a sort of nationwide sort of guideline. And now it still isn't really. It's devolved into each state, and each state is taking their own precautions. And it'll be interesting to see which state fares the best after most of this is resolved.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Texas, especially, and like the states have already reopened with large, I guess like a diverse population demographic wise, like suburban, urban, and rural. Right. We'll see how like that plays out, especially with the vaccine, seeing if it does stop contagion. Which hopefully it does. But yeah, and then I mean we'll see that firsthand in restaurants and stuff like that. If you ever go out to eat, I mean, like for instance, I work at like a restaurant called Fogo de Chão. It's like a churrascaria, right? And the procedure regarding like stuff like a salad bar has like evolved like throughout the pandemic. That has made it easier for both like customers and like management too to like manage that. So I'm curious also how like restaurants and other businesses are gonna like adapt to this, and whether we're gonna see like a significant change in how those like businesses are run in the next few months, especially as vaccines are more popular. The official procedure is changing, recommendations change. So
I know one thing I've noticed is HEB, like the whole personal shopper thing that they have where you can pull up and they'll load everything in your car.
yeah,
That, like, they had maybe like a couple people at each store designated for that. Now they
really?
have like dozens and dozens of people hired for that.
yeah, there you go.
And they've like, I know at the one in the Woodlands off of at 9595 Six Pines, they opened up. I think they did construction on part of the building and added like a door and like a whole place for you to pull
Really?
up, just designated to the building. So
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
and
mean,
I was thinking the other day too about restaurants. Is I was going to Chick-fil-A the other day through the drive-through, and realized that the parking lot there has been closed for almost a year. So
yeah.
people are starting to just get used to.
Like just driving through.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see. Actually, starting next Wednesday is when all businesses are allowed to open at 100% capacity.
Just in time for spring break.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
But Governor Abbott did note that businesses still have the opportunity to choose if they want to limit customers or require masks. But change could potentially lead to massive gatherings in other venues like sports fields or concert halls or stuff to that sort. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
For sure.
And even then, with concert halls, it's hard because it's still up to the owner and everything what they want to do.
Right.
But
I do want to note that Governor Abbott did emphasize that mask usage should still be commonplace, regardless of whether the mask mandate is lifted or not. He said specifically that if you're in a building where it's like 6 feet social distancing is not possible with those outside of your family, then you should definitely still wear a mask. So this isn't necessarily okay to like not wear masks. This is more of like maybe like a relaxation of like some more strict procedure, but that doesn't change what the recommendations are for the CDC. So
right, I remember last year when they said that. I remember the Surgeon General tweeted, "Masks don't work. Please reserve these for healthcare workers." At the time, I was like, I know they do work, and I know that you're just trying to keep the stock.
yeah, the
up.
supply. Yeah.
Supply. There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it'll change too much because around here, I mean,
it's already been pretty.
Yeah.
It's already been pretty open. I feel.
you'll have the occasional person who will refuse and get kicked out, but I mean that's maybe happens a handful times a day around here.
Yeah. But I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. I guess. There's not much else to really say about it. But yeah. earlier in the segment, we talked about opening up a broader discussion about development in the Woodlands regarding news about Mitchell Island, especially with development continuing in the already established neighborhood. So we're just going to talk about that a little bit, discuss what that means for the Woodlands as a whole, what the Woodlands develop I guess commitments are to the environment and also development, and creating not only a good place for residents but also for the environment that they live in. So I guess we can open it up by talking about what they plan to do and what the status of it is currently.
I just starting off with that. I remember last year, or it might have been almost 2 years ago at this point now, but there is some statistic about the Woodlands being at 108% residential capacity. So all these new developments and stuff that people are talking about, I don't know if they've already been planned or something, or have been applied for recently, or
Right.
because technically we're supposed to not have any more room for homes or room designated for homes.
Right. I'm actually kind of curious on how that operates, because I know that it's pretty clear that as the Woodlands has developed, I guess more urban style residential accommodations have been more popular. For instance, in the north part of Shenandoah, you don't see a lot of the new homes being constructed that are single family homes. They're more townhomes that are being constructed in gated communities.
How about Hughes Landing?
Yeah, and by Hughes Landing, they developed out the
It's
the
more
pedestrian pathway.
New urbanism.
Yeah, and it's
I remember that word.
Yeah.
and it's all townhomes that are 4 stories tall that are in a gated community. So it's kind of interesting to see how the Woodlands is going to respond to that lack of land usage. I know we talked about it with one of the candidates for election last cycle.
Bruce Reiser or
Maybe.
It was
Dan
the
Hannon.
very first one that he chased hogs out.
Well, either way.
Tom Chumbley.
Yeah,
Tom
Mr.
Chumley.
Chumley.
That was
yeah.
a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. But yeah, we were talking about with him how land usage is going to change as the resident capacity has already been hit, right? We talked about how in the Grogan's Mill area we're already seeing the rebuilding of new homes, or rebuilding on existing plots of land, new homes, right?
Yep.
So it's interesting to see how I guess this discussion about Mitchell Island is going to open up precedent for other developments, right? Because this kind of does represent the the symbolic clash between development and conservation, right?
Right.
Especially because according to environmental consultants that were hired by Howard Hughes Corporation, bald eagles have been have had a significant presence in the Lake Woodlands area since the 90s, right? It's not really understood why. I'm pretty sure it's mostly just because it's a large body of water that's not super active, at least in the areas that aren't developed. But we'll have to see how that moves forward too, especially if they do end up building those townhomes that's super dense.
Yeah.
See how the traffic evolves.
And even East County, I don't think we've ever talked about that area, maybe once or twice. We need to cover that more actually. But I don't know if you guys have went down 242 eastbound past
Near
45.
13, 14 kind of.
Yeah,
deal?
near 13, 13, 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's a very rural area out there, kind of wooded area, and along 242 there. I don't know if you guys have seen trees being cleared and stuff, but they're building new developments out there and stuff. So
Yeah.
if you guys ever have a chance, or anyone listening have a chance, if you're driving out there, pay attention. Look at how much just vacant lots there are, and how much development there could be. And even out in Magnolia, there's new subdivisions being planned all the time in there. And it's not only just the Woodlands. There's growth going everywhere, and it's going to cause the population to go.
Yeah, I know. I think the biggest development, at least that I know of, on the east side of 45 would probably be Harper's Preserve.
Yes.
They finished that HEB right there. They already had housing going on the north side of 242. On the south side, they're doing a lot of developments from the 200s up to the 700s, I believe. So that's another big chunk, probably a similar size to Harper's Landing. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that develops out too, and what the Woodlands thinks about that as well. Because I know that Woodlands residents are gonna have a different opinion as compared to normal D.R. Horton and all the other developers and stuff like that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, I was just gonna say what that means for Woodland schools, especially because I know that's a super big draw factor for a lot of the residential communities outside of the Woodlands. If you go on 1488 westbound, you'll see at least like 2 or 3 signs that say new development, 200s up, Woodland schools.
Right.
That's like the
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the most important aspects about like the home,
Yep.
that they have access to Woodland schools. So I'm gonna be interested to see how that impacts like CISD, different residences.
I noticed, I don't know if you've been up Old Conroe Road before, where like that escape theater is and like
Yeah.
the apartments. There's like a whole D.R. Horton thing in there with like
Oh,
a couple
really?
hundred homes. And I
There you go.
I went through there once and I noticed a couple woodland signs there.
Yeah.
I
there you
don't
go.
know. It's weird to think that they're zoned there, but I think it's one of those weird things where I know some people go to McCullough and then go to College Park, just the way it's zoned. Those people might go to Knox and then go to Woodlands, because I know if you
Really?
live, well, I mean, if you live in Jacobs Reserve, you're zoned for Knox and College Park.
Right.
And if you think about that, it's not that much further, I guess, than right off there off Old Conroe Road is from Knox or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's a long way.
But yeah, it's interesting to think about, especially because, like, at least from what I understand, I mean, I'm obviously, like, not that old. I haven't lived here since the 70s, right? But, like, I mean, like, it is kind of interesting to see, like, from my understanding, the Woodlands has, like, always had, like, opportunity to expand, whether it be through Sterling Ridge or through Creekside, right? And with all these areas being expanded upon, especially Creekside, like,
Yes.
blowing up, basically,
Yeah.
and almost being built out. I'm interested to see, like, what's going to happen next, right? Like, where they're going to go.
Mitchell Island.
Yeah, there you go. Mitchell Island's the last.
Another 16 homes.
But yeah, I think it's interesting to think about too, and what that means for like price houses or like home prices and stuff like that too. They
You
can't
also
build
got to
anymore.
look at, if you guys have a chance, Google Earth, go look at Street View, like on 1488, 10 years ago. 2007, 2008, it was 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Yep.
One going that way, one going that way.
And speaking of 1488, there was the whole Jones State Forest establishment. If you just look at how Jones State Forest was before the Woodlands development was and after, you can definitely tell that we've cut down and we've enclosed upon that area.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, for
looking
sure.
like that's what's going to happen to Mitchell Island.
Yeah,
We're
I'm-
threatening it.
Right. Exactly. I know
Right.
that like there was like a whole activist issue regarding
Jones State Forest.
Jones State Forest, whether they should like expand out on it. And I know that I'm pretty sure they're finishing that development that's on the east side of Jones State Forest. So it's basically like surrounded by homes at this
Right.
point.
Yep.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So we'll see how that plays out. I think it's gonna be interesting to watch. And,
Definitely.
yeah, and I think like the fact that they're trying to replat those land or those lots on Mitchell Island to be townhomes shows the increased demand.
Mhm.
Because originally it was 19 mansions, now it's 58 homes, so mixed like plot sizes. So
It
we'll
was.
see.
It was. They pushed. The plan was for 58 homes, but like this was back in November of 2020.
Right.
So the plan was for 58 homes by the Houston Planning Commission, but however, like you were talking about, Rawson,
Yeah.
there was a group called the Citizens for Eagle Island, and they came into agreement with the Howard Hughes Corporation and reduced the plan to around 30 homes.
There we go. There's the
Yeah.
resolution of it. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting that they made the compromise and that it went from 19 to to 58, right? And they finally settled on the 30. So
Yep.
Well, in other places, it would just be clear that the development would win out. But that's what's so unique about the Woodlands, and it's just such a place that trees and the environment can just be living in synergy with the people.
Right. The Woodlands.
right. But one touch on that, well, like one final touch on that, I guess, is that the Howard Hughes Corporation like specifically said that they have a large focus on the environment, saying, quote, "As we develop the Woodlands, we have set aside roughly 30% of our 28,000 acres to designated open spaces. The Lake Woodlands is a man-made lake, so part of the construction created the environment and habitat for all of nature to thrive, including eagles. This includes forest buffers and parks, which allows eagles to recreate nests, to hunt, and thrive." So it looks like they already have like environment focused and conservation focused development too. So
Which
just
is
gotta watch
great.
out for that. Yeah, I mean it's good. It's good that it's not going to be just like rows of homes and stuff like that.
And
I guess it's
yeah.
kind of the draw, right?
Cookie cutter.
I mean, but should there be homes in the first place is,
Oh, there you
a
go.
question
That
that
is
we
kind
should
of
be
discussion.
asking,
Right. But yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch on that a little bit more, or how do we feel?
I think we covered that enough, I
yeah,
guess.
I think we touched on that pretty well. But yeah, is there any other news that we want to talk about or discuss before we close out?
All right. Well, I guess real quick, just to recap. How long has it been since I don't think we touched
Been a
on
while. It feels good to be back.
that. Yeah.
You know.
4 months, I think.
Yeah.
I think, what was it? We recorded Bruce Reiser on the 28th, released it on the 29th. We released it on the 29th because that was a Thursday. So it's basically been 4 months since we've released something. It's crazy. But hopefully we will
Get back on track, right?
get back on track, right? And next time, I know I've touched on this with you guys. We might do some coverage on, Texas power generation and delivery with someone from Energy. Well, at least that's for our area, and discuss also ERCOT too, because I know we aren't on ERCOT, or at least
Right.
where we live. Up here might partially be, but I know it's been a while since the freeze and everything. It's kind of been like phased out for some of us, but we definitely should cover that because it's pretty interesting. And then, of course, moving through the summer and all of that will be recording stuff. And I just realized I am not sitting over here this time. Isabella's been
Yep.
Doing our camera
doing
work.
this.
But-
So it's kind of awkward sitting here because it's been forever since I've sat here. But yeah, and we also trained all these guys to do the stuff once we leave and whenever, I don't know when. But I guess that sums it up.
Yeah.
Anyone have anything else to add?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Feels good to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're on it Tuesday, so we can release it on a Thursday. All right. I guess that's it. Well, you're listening to the County Pulse on 104.5, 106.1, or I should say available on TV 12 and online at countypulse.org. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Lucky strikes and a fifth of Patron. Ice down that igloo cooler. Tank of gas at